I sat in my home office and went, oh my gosh, what did I do? In another week, I'm not going to have a paycheck. That was my biggest pain point. I literally started from scratch on day one.
Welcome to StaffBuffalo's Pain Points Podcast.
Welcome to the next episode of the Pain Points Podcast. I have Heather Fassari here. She's the owner of Interlink CFO, and she's here to tell us her story about her career and her journey and her current adventure. So welcome to our Pain Points Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Wonderful. So as everyone knows, I like to start with really getting to know you. So how did you get on this path of your career? Because no path is direct. So,
well, I actually started my path in high school.
Wow,
so
that's early.
I did. I knew I wanted to own a business in high school. I took every business class I could take. I started learning accounting my junior year. I did an internship in entrepreneurship and went to, got my undergrad, went to business school, worked in different corporate roles as controller, as director of operations. I've managed a software development company. So I had a lot of different roles in accounting, finance, and operations. And throughout that, I knew it was just kind of gearing up for something better. And then, the right opportunity and time came to start my own business, and, I jumped at it. It was definitely time.
Yeah. How many years ago did you start?
I started a little over 3 years ago.
That's awesome. Good for you. And you've grown exponentially. So
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Interlink CFO. So I know that you could combine all those little components that you kind of gathered throughout your career to really get you to where you are today, where you can optimize, you can kind of look at it from a business perspective instead of just the numbers perspective.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about Interlink.
Yep, absolutely. So Interlink CFO we are a fractional CFO business, and to your point, we work with the business as a whole. So sure, we look at the finances, we oversee the finance team in a business and make sure things are, accurate and things like that. But we're also looking at the business as a whole. So we look at the operations, we look at the budgeting, the way that the operations are coincide with the budget, and we make decisions based on the numbers that we're looking at. And so it's more of taking finances to the next level and to the next step, right? And being able to work with business owners to make decisions on the business and helping them work on the business, and really look for growth and prosperity long term.
That's awesome. So, and you work across industries, correct?
Yep.
And then so also all different sizes of businesses. So how do you, especially if someone kind of is growing or has grown their company maybe for the past 30 years or so, how do you tell them to get them to release those reins a little bit and give them to you so that you can help them really improve? I'm sure it's a lot of earning a lot of trust.
Yes, absolutely. Every client's a little bit different, but I think, I typically work really well with all my clients. I jump right in, and I think that's one of the things that makes me different. I'm a very hands-on person. I'm not afraid to be on site. I'm not afraid to kind of get into the weeds of things, and my goal is to kind of get in, kind of figure out what's going on in the business. We do a little cleanup usually, just to kind of get things on the right side, and we kind of go from there, and then we can have a better conversation of what the business looks like, kind of get on the same page, and then start talking strategy and that optimization and what's coming forward. And I think in those early phases in working with a business, I think that's where the trust is built, right? Because once you jump in and they see that you're kind of on board, you're there,
You can journey with them.
Yeah, then the trust is kind of inherent. So
I like that. And so then you kind of just snowball into what else do you need, what else do you need, and then you can kind of pick up because I'm sure a lot of times it's a little bit of an iceberg where you can see that there's one very glaring issue, but then there's a lot underneath the surface. Right. So then how do you approach, because it's got to be tough. There's got to be a lot of just navigation of saying, hey, let me take this on over, let me tell you what I see in my interpretation of things. Yeah. So how do you really get those owners to kind of buy in? Like after the trust is earned, after you've done all of that, are you continually adding different technologies? What are you doing to kind of continue to improve their business past that initial tip of the iceberg?
So since I manage a software development company, one of my strengths is on the software side and kind of the technical side of things and the operations. I manage a 24-hour operations, so with key key employees and key individuals. So not just entry-level people, higher skilled. And so really, I think what I learned from that is being able to take some of the smaller problems, fix those, but then really kind of gear up to look at the business as a whole. And I think once you have that trust and they kind of learn a little bit more about me and what I can do, kind of that light bulb goes off and they say, all right, let's start digging in. You know, most of my clients are in growth mode, so they need that. They need that expertise and they need that financial partner or strategic partner that can, you know, help kind of enable that growth.
So then what were the main kind of signals that made you kind of jump out of the corporate role and be like, now it's the time to really do it on your own, really become that entrepreneur that you built all these components up to become?
Well, I have been working in corporate finance and other positions for 25 years. So timing-wise and skill-wise, I felt comfortable to kind of make that jump. My kids were older. I didn't have the same responsibilities. And I was kind of at a point in the business that I was working in where it was doing the same thing for the same business is a bit mundane, right? In this role, I get to work with different businesses doing different things all the time. And I'm working directly with business owners. There's just such a huge impact that you can see in somebody's business. And so I knew that's what I needed to do. And that's where I wanted to take my skills, and especially in Buffalo.
So then what were some of the like pain points or the scary moments you had when you were like, okay, bye-bye corporate America, hello, problem solving, jumping into everything, and always kind of just making things happen?
So day one, I have a home office. Day one, I sat in my home office and went, oh my gosh, what did I do? In another week, I'm not going to have a paycheck. So that was my first pain point. I am an accountant in operations and strategy by trade, not sales, not marketing. And so I had my first pain point was trying to figure out how to market myself, I had to redo my website, do a rebranding. I had to start from scratch. So that was my biggest pain point. I really literally started from scratch on day one.
Wow. So then you got into your home desk and you're having your oh shit moment and you're going, okay, now it's real. How did you do the marketing? Did you do it yourself? Did you find a trusted advisor that could do it for you?
So I started, like a lot of business owners do, I started just getting out there and doing networking. I had done my own website initially, and I knew that needed to be on the list of high priorities. But I started with my own website, just getting out there and hitting the pavement and getting face-to-face with people, doing networking. And then I think within a year, I did a complete rebranding. New website, new name, new logo, everything from the bottom up.
So like it almost like clarified after a year that you're like, okay, I'm just going slightly down the wrong path. I'm going to rebrand and then that's going to be my thing. So you kind of like knew after that year the direction really you wanted to focus on.
Right, exactly. And so from there, the next thing was just kind of keep plugging away and building my client base. And that's been great.
Now, which networking keeps coming up? So which networking events have you found, or institutions or things that you found the most value in, where you could really kind of connect with those small, medium-sized business owners that you needed to connect with? Was it through online? Was it through getting out there and actually like meeting face-to-face and here's my card, old school style?
Well, I got out there old school with cards. I am by nature, I don't sit still well. So I'm on a couple of boards. I am a SCORE mentor, and I do a lot of volunteering on top of things. So I was really getting out there face to face and old school business cards style. But again, that's part of my business model too, is that face to face interaction. I really think it makes a difference in the role that I play in a business, right?
Especially because partner. Exactly, you're a strategic partner, bringing a lot of organizations a little bit out of the Stone Age too, because you're adding your accounting knowledge plus technology plus the whole operational component. So you're seeing how things connect, whether it's point of sale systems or whether it's WIP or anything like that, cost of goods sold, the whole nine, and just like streamlining it to make it more functional for the business owner, which I think is extremely important, especially if it's more of like paperwork and all of that stuff that you can kind of streamline, and it's a more efficient, it's more accurate, which is extremely important, and there's less of that rework. So I think that that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then right now you're kind of at a tipping point where you're getting nice and big, and you're having recurring clients, and you're getting new challenging awesome clients, and you're just ready for your next step.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, that's the next pain point in my business.
Yes.
The next step is hiring.
Yeah.
I am looking to hire somebody entry level to support me, and then, looking to grow from there.
Now, do you need a mini version of you, or do you need like the yin to your yang?
Well, I need a mini version. I know me well enough.
You're like, no, I need a copy paste.
Yeah.
So someone that can do operations, someone that can kind of take the business part, your actual business part off your plate, so that you can help the other businesses.
Right, exactly.
Yes, isn't that ironic?
Yep. So I do have a virtual assistant that helps me out on the back end, but I need somebody that can do, to your point, a little bit more on the accounting and the operation side, and do some of the back end things.
So someone that you can kind of just little mold into yourself.
Exactly.
You're like, yes, the future little mold of CFO.
Yeah.
I like that. So then tell me about a few of the different industries that you've worked within, and some of your wins surrounding that, some of the pain points and some of the wins that you've accomplished.
So I work with for-profit and nonprofit businesses.
Great.
And a lot of my background in my corporate world has been in manufacturing. So I work with a lot of manufacturing clients. I work with a lot of contracting clients. They're somewhat similar to manufacturing. You're looking at job costing, you're looking at kind of the ins and outs of labor and all of that stuff. So they're very similar. Again, I work with nonprofits, so now you're pivoting completely into the nonprofit world and
The
looking at
grant
grants.
accounting. Yes.
Yes.
Always the grant accounting. Yeah.
And speaking of pain points, that's one of them.
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge, is looking at grants and kind of determining what they look like, what that means, and how to account for them.
Interpreting them, essentially, yes.
So that's one of the things that I love about doing what I do, is that dynamic, and being able to kind of shift from one business to the other, in different types. But at the end of the day, business owners are still the same. We're still as a whole looking at the same things and making the same decisions.
Same problems, just a different perspective, essentially. And what I like about outsourcing and our outsourcing talent optimization, our outsourcing HR, is that you learn from every single client you're with.
Right.
Like, they got to that point because they were really, really good at something that they do really well. And I always love learning either the different systems, the different ways that they interact with things, the different ways that they look at things, and their different goals. And going through all of that with people and trying to figure out how you can zig and zag with them, how you can be that strategic partner is so valuable. And I think especially for small and mid-sized businesses in Western New York, you're not having them take that huge commitment for a full CFO, or when they really can afford like a staff account maybe, and so then you're and they're fractionally and actually getting the impact that they need out of it, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, it's great. I think for what I'm doing, that fractional piece is really important, right? Because most of the businesses that I work with are growing, and they're at that moment where they need that level of expertise and that fractional role, and not just in finance. It encompasses everything, right? It's HR, marketing, and having those of us that do those roles for them is super important, and to get them to the next level. So I think it's really important to have that.
Yeah, and I think that when owners and business partners, and when they're focused on what they do best, they don't have time to think about necessarily everything else. So having a support function like that is extremely valuable. I mean, we've used outsource so many times, and it makes sense.
Yep.
It makes sense to get you to the next level, and once again, learn from them. It's like,
that's my goal with every client. I hope to give them the expertise that I bring, help to enable their business, but then also learn something. I want every client that I work with, I want to learn something, whether it's just a new skill because you just come across something that maybe you haven't come across before, or just a new relationship, a new dynamic, something. I just think it makes the relationship between me and the client more powerful, and it empowers me down the road and how my business works. So.
Absolutely. So then where do you see your business really growing over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, where do you truly envision it?
Yeah, well, I want to have a small team. I like small. That's just the way I work.
It's easy to move.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
it's easy
always
to like
had small
navigate
teams,
and yeah.
the biggest team I think I've managed is 10 people. And to me, that's just a good size because it maintains kind of that intimate relationship of the team and that dynamic. And I really like to work with my employees really hands-on and kind of grow them not only in the business that we're working in this case my business, but also empower them as, to kind of lead their life and go to their next level and help them long term. So I think, in 5-10 years, I want to grow what I'm doing. I want to have a small team to support me doing that and, just work with more businesses that I can help.
And you want to stay pretty much in the Western New York area and just kind of, there's plenty of businesses here that could use the assistance. So you're really just within pretty much driving distance probably. Yeah. Wonderful. So then do you have any key target organizations or industries or anything like that where it's kind of like your sweet spot? I know you mentioned manufacturing, construction, tech. Are there any even industries maybe you avoid or anything like that?
The only industry I really avoid is healthcare. That's very, very much a niche type role. There are a lot of doctors out there that are starting private practices and things like that. But, I just haven't had a background in healthcare, so I typically stay away from that. I don't do a lot with restaurants, but I have worked with them. I've worked with a long-term restaurant here in Buffalo that wanted to sell their business, and I helped them kind of gear up to do that. So I pretty much run the gamut, but those are the two things that I typically stay away from.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And so then tell me a little bit more about if someone is ready to sell their business or they think they are, what do they need to get ready financially and how long does that typically take?
Well, how long is a good question. Because a lot of business owners say, I'm ready to sell my business. And they say, a couple months. But really, on the financial side, you need to be gearing up about a year before, 12 to 18 months before. Because you need somebody that's going to come in, review your financials, and start let's make some decisions on making this look good and making it look attractive to a buyer, and figuring out how you can kind of make that P&L look a little bit better. Even before you look at getting a valuation, start kind of getting feelers out there for working with brokers and getting potential buyers in.
So on the P&L, can you explain a little bit what you would typically suggest then? Are they getting more things on certain expense lines beforehand? Are they slowing down hiring, maybe doing more external stuff to make themselves more VC or PE attractive?
Yeah. So the number one thing, depending on the size of the business, is make sure that you don't have personal expenses on your P&L, because that makes your P&L look worse. So that's number one. I see it all the time. That's number one. And then certainly kind of optimizing and making your resources and your expenses more efficient. And sometimes it doesn't usually mean cutting things, but it could. But it's usually kind of looking through those expenses and saying, okay, what do we really need here? What makes sense? How can we make this more efficient? Use the resources that we have to make this look better and maybe grow that top line. So that's a good start on the P&L, is looking kind of a bottoms up approach.
Okay. Yeah, so take a look at the expense. Obviously, more sales the merrier, but if you're looking to actually sell, you need to look at the whole thing and make sure that you don't have anything that's really dragging it down, which makes sense. All of a sudden, if you have like multiple cars on there, with personal expenses, all of a sudden it's like, well, that's $20K later. So that would make sense so that they aren't trying to get evaluated when they're at the bottom. They're getting evaluated when they're more clear line to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Because having tons of sales is great, but if you have no profitability, there's not much to buy.
No, then they're like, what am I buying? Zero. Zero sum game. That's wonderful. So then what advice do you have for small to medium-sized businesses from a financial perspective? So maybe they just have an accountant right now, but they don't know if they're really looking at they don't know what they don't know. They don't know if they're looking at the finances correctly. They think they do. They might have 1 or 2 KPIs. What's your general advice?
Yeah, well, first thing is to make sure that things are being done on a regular basis on the accounting side. The transaction level things are happening on a regular basis. That monthly you're doing at least a bank account and credit card reconciliations. You're looking at your monthly financials. They're getting done and completed and reviewed in a timely manner. Looking at March financials in June is not helpful. 3 months have gone by and now you've lost that time to make decisions. And the second piece is, I would say, a cash forecast. It's really difficult to make quick decisions if you don't know where your cash is going. So I typically do those on a weekly basis, and it gives you the opportunity to know what cash you have, make decisions, start saving, paying off debts, things like that. But it gives you a shorter window to make decisions than just waiting each month to look at your financials as well.
That's great. Yeah, so there's some things that you look maybe on the weekly, monthly, quarterly. You don't have to do everything weekly, but certainly don't do everything quarterly.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And then what other services? Because I'm sure we see it all the time when small businesses, medium-sized businesses go to you. They probably start where they're like, here's accounting that we need help with, but there's probably a bunch of other things that you do help with and help them shore up. So what are some ancillary things that you've had to do in order to help your clients out?
Yep. So I do a couple things on the smaller side, kind of intensives. I do business assessments. So sometimes that's for people that are selling their business and they need, kind of a short-term review of what their financials look like, what the business looks like. We not only look at financials, but we look at kind of, the operations, some of the risks that may be there that maybe, a potential buyer would look at. So that's kind of a short-term piece. On the buy side of things, I help through the due diligence side of that, and kind of doing the same thing on the buy side, right? So you're examining the seller's financials, you're looking at what potential risks you might be bringing on, things like that.
All the debt, all of that.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
So you're looking at that, and then I do some half-day intensive. So if somebody has a specific pain point, we can sit down and in an afternoon just kind of really dig into that. And it doesn't have to be financial. Financials usually come into play in those decision-making pieces, and knowing what those financial pieces are important. But it's more or less having somebody like me that's kind of a sounding board, and we can sit down and say, here's my pain point. How can I fix this? How can I make my business better? So it's that's like a short term, like I said, like a half-day intensive type thing. And then I also do some strategic projects, things like ERP upgrades. Well, some of these are financial, but I've done inventory capitalization projects, things like that for bigger companies. Again, it's a specific pain point, but a larger scale in that case.
So would it be to the point where one of the half-day brainstorming sessions, if it could be, hey, our marketing department is using 6 different tools and we thought it can all be done in this tool, we need to sit down and really go through it, and you may have been the one that was like, you're using these 3 things and maybe you don't need it because you found it in the financials and it looks redundant. Yes. Right. So then I could see how that would then go from okay, it was a financial discussion, but now it's a bigger discussion of an operational improvement, probably streamlining processes, saving money, and doing it all at the same time, which is great.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell me some advice maybe for someone who already has that entrepreneurial fire in their belly, but they're not quite there yet. So how would you say to get into actually running their own organization?
Yep. Well, I think the first thing is to have a plan. Number one, you have to have a business plan. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It doesn't have to be, super detailed, but you have to at least start with a plan. Right, you got to cover your major items: finance, marketing, HR, operations. Who's going to do things? Where are you going to be? Is it brick and mortar? Is it online, virtual? So those are the few things that you really have to start thinking about. Then I would say you start with the finance piece, right? Look at a budget. Right, now you have a plan.
Is it feasible?
Yeah. Now you have a plan. This is what I want to do. The second piece is, now how am I going to make that happen?
Are you charging enough? Are you covering your insurances? Do you have to hire? Is it going to be a larger expense there? Oh no, you're hiring. Now you need to offer benefits in order to entice people. Right. So that's a lot to think about.
Yep. So that's the second part is budgeting. And then it's really the operations and the execution. What people do you need? How are you going to make it happen? Things like that. So,
what you have to outsource?
Yes.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, if you need to outsource marketing, if you need to outsource sales, if you need to outsource HR, if you need to outsource the finances, there are options.
Right.
And then you can work with multiple people and have your own little consortium of professionals, which is fantastic. So if people are trying to find your contact information to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
Well, you can look at my website, www.interlinkcfo.com.
Great website, by the way.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
That was part of my rebranding.
Yes,
so.
it's great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And my email address is heather@interlinkcfo.com, and I can be reached there. So reach out to me anytime. I love talking to people. I love meeting people for coffee and just getting to know. Doesn't have to be a huge thing, but I love sitting down and having coffee with people. So
once again, networking.
yeah.
I think I've heard that a million times. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you get your business go? You got to network. You got to get out there. You got to ask questions. You got to listen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining the Pain Points podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Points podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on future episodes.